Lord, my heart is set on you, so I'll sing, I'll give my praise. Time to mend that soul guitar and get up early and awake in glory, and get up early and awake. I lift my voice above the people for your mercy and your love and me, a love that's higher than the heavens, and faithfulness that's reaching to the clouds, and reaching way beyond the sky. Who has spoken in his holiness, who has made a way for me, save with his strong right hand, who will lead the way for me, my Jesus. Yes, indeed, she will lead the way for me. Lord, my heart is set on you, and so I'll sing, I give my praise. Time to mend these broken strengths, get up early and awake in glory, and get up early and awake. I lift my voice above the people for your mercy and your love and me, a love that's higher than the heavens, and faithfulness that's reaching to reaching way beyond the sky. Who has spoken in his holiness, who has made a way for me, who will save with his strong right hand, who will lead the way for me, my Jesus. Yes, indeed, she will lead the way for me. The new day dawns, the curtains draw, be lifted, Lord, above it all. Let heaven and the earth sing your praise. With you we gain the victory, Christ behind and Christ before me. Be lifted, Lord, above your enemies. So I'll sing, I give my praise.
Guys, I have some sad news. I think we might have to call the day off. My co-host Becca is nowhere to be found. I don't know where she is. She said her train was delayed. She's not here yet.
Guys, the show can go on!
Jeez.
The show can go on!
Yeah.
I'm here!
Ooh,
Sorry, Alex. Sorry.
Becca, I mean, I'm glad you're here, but
Yeah.
just we
I
have to
know.
calm the jam. Is that how you
No,
say
well,
it? Calm the jam?
Calm the jam.
Calm the jam.
Calm the
I've never
jam.
been able to
Pipe
say it.
down,
It's the whole
simmer.
American thing.
Yeah.
Pipe down.
Pipe down now.
Well, guys, the show will go on.
The show will go
Welcome to
on.
summer school, day 2.
Yay! Woo, woo, woo. Summer
Like,
school.
honestly, I can't believe, Becca, how Jim managed to pack like the entire biblical story into 45 minutes
My
yesterday.
mind was blown.
How do you do that? How do you do
No
that?
idea.
Like, a few quotes for you. Check this out. He talked about Jesus. He said, Jesus is 200% reality. Yeah.
Whoa.
Can you fit your mind around that?
Not quite.
Yeah, me neither.
Just
I don't know.
halfway
I wonder
there.
if you guys can.
Yeah.
Another one, he said that for us as humans, it's our goal to extend the boundaries until all of earth is a heavenly place.
Whoa.
If that's not a call to
Deep
action,
stuff.
I don't know what is.
I don't know either.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
Guys, we've got a lot of you in the chat who are, giving us all different kinds of messages from all around. I was going to say yesterday we had someone from Japan giving a shout out. We had somebody from Belfast from Netherlands as well.
Yeah.
This is a global affair.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got someone called Clippity Clop saying good morning this morning. I don't know. Is that someone
Are you a horse rider?
Who supports Liverpool?
Yeah,
Probably.
If that is
must be
you,
it.
please step forward. We would love to know.
Colin, don't be worried. You don't have to be worried. We're here. It's gonna go forward. You said phew.
Yeah.
We're here.
Colin, if I can make it, you can make it, hence. All right. It's all good. Sorry, guys. I just need to. Oh, sorry.
Oh, look, good.
I just need to get this out of my system.
What, Becca? What's going on?
I came in late, okay, and I thought, I'll make a cup of tea. No, I can't make a cup of tea because my morning is ruined, not just by the trains, but by my favourite mug. Someone stole it. Someone stole my favourite mug, Alex. I just can't deal with it. I'm just feeling so angry.
It's okay.
I'm just feeling...
Becca, whoa, what's going on? Oh! Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something like that. Everything's all of a sudden so massive.
We're just tiny.
Yeah, we're tiny. I don't know what's happening.
What's going on?
So, I mean, yesterday we talked about, the bigger story that we're part of with God.
Yeah.
Sometimes, even though we're part of that bigger story, we get caught up in smaller stories like this, where, everything just seems a little bit too big. Like things that aren't supposed to be as big become big. We have different idols in our lives that we serve, so kind of like your mug.
We haven't seen the mug though, Alex.
But Becca, it's an idol. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to call you out lovingly on this one.
You're right.
I really want better for you to get into the big story. I mean, for me, like sometimes it's like feelings. Like I felt really sad. We had to thought we had to cancel today because you weren't here.
True.
So we all have these smaller stories that we get caught up in, and that's what we're going to look at today. I think that's what Jim's going to try and help us to figure out. Jim, as you can tell, we need help with how we face these smaller stories.
Please help us.
Yeah. I'm sure all of you guys have different things that are going on for you too. But before we go to Jim, a few quick announcements. So the first one is that next Tuesday, so a week from today, the Navigators are putting on an event for grads and for students who have just graduated. So if you just graduated, if you're like within 1 or 2 years of graduating, there's an event that's going to be for grads, and Davey is going to play a wee video for us about that.
If you're graduating this summer, or you're in that transition between the student ministry and the workplace, we've got an event for you. On Tuesday the 1st of June, 7:30 till 8:30, we're running our graduates event on Zoom, and we'd love you to join us. Our heart as Navigators is that wherever God places you, you would be fruitful, you would multiply, and that you would bless those around you, showing them the love of Christ. And we want to help you as you make this transition into the workplace. So at our graduates event, we've got Colin Gillis coming to speak to us. He's got experience with students and working with graduates. And we're also running a Q&A with a student who's made that transition into the workplace. So you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, to learn from them, and hear from their experience. Booking is live. We'd love you to join us. Sign up now.
Wow, that looks great.
I'm digging those groovy jams.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So what I want to say about that is just that that's for anybody in the UK, all around the UK. You can go to that link that was in the video. I'm sure maybe Davey can put it up again at some point during the rest of this broadcast. And so you can sign up for that. Again, it's next week. So get on that if you're interested, if you want to join in. It sounds like a great time.
I'm definitely going. So
So one other thing to cover is, we got to watch Tom and Judy eating their cake yesterday. That was such a joy.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Today we want to see how someone else is enjoying the restrictions, having a little bit more freedom. So Davey, can you pop them up?
Hey guys, it's Claire in Glasgow. I have just had my second COVID vaccination, and I'm really grateful for the vaccination programme and for the easing of lockdown, because it now means that I get to do things like having coffee with Amanda, going to church, and finally we are back in our Glasgow NAVS office, where I can give you an exclusive behind the scenes view of Source School. Hope you're having a good one, guys. Bye.
Wait, we have a green screen, Alex?
We do, yeah. Becca, I don't know if
never
you've noticed,
noticed
but
that.
we've kind of been changing the backgrounds.
I just thought we painted
the whole
walls.
time so far.
I didn't notice that at all.
Becca, I mean, I'll talk to you about it later. It's all right.
I think so. I think you should.
Looks like your older sister's really enjoying her new freedoms.
Well, she's a bit of a drama queen, to be honest. So she's
Ooh.
enjoying anything.
Ouch. Well, Claire said the same right back at you.
Yeah,
so
well,
this is
the blood, isn't it?
the ongoing battle of the Donahues will continue throughout the week. Stay tuned.
Remember
everyone.
to put your favourites in the chat. No, so like yesterday, we have a live person coming to talk to us, or coming to talk to Jim specifically and have a question for him. So I think Abby is going to pop up any second from the Glasgow Ministry. Oh, and Jim.
Jim, we've got Jim too. Before we ask Abby or have Abby ask her question, Jim, we've heard that you've put out a book recently on what you've been speaking about, and it sounds like there might be a wee discount in for some of the people who are listening today. Could you just tell us a little bit more, maybe about that book, how it ties into what you're talking to us?
Yeah. The book is called What on Earth is Heaven? And it started just from my own questions about heaven. And then I used to work in palliative care, as I said, so with people that are dying. So there's sort of questions that people might ask. So it covers a whole lot of things, like thinking about where is heaven, what is heaven, what happens between, when we die and when Jesus comes again. What is the kingdom of heaven that Jesus talks about? And I kind of look at the whole Bible, as I did yesterday, thinking about heaven and earth, the relationship of heaven and earth, and what the Bible really says about both those things. So I spoke to IVP, who published it, and they said they give a discount. So it is on Amazon as well, but if you don't want to feed Jeff Bezos's millions and billions, you can buy it on IVP, and they give them a 20% discount if you use that code, which looks complicated, but it's basically the initials of What on Earth is Heaven 20. Okay.
Thank you so much, Jim. That's so generous.
Right. You heard it. Heard it.
I wrote it with students in mind. So it's lots of people that have read it said it's very accessible and sort of apologetic too. It's the kind of thing you could give away to a friend who's not sure about their faith, or someone even who's not a Christian.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
That's perfect. That sounds great for a lot of people who are listening. Check that out.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so Abby, lovely to have you. Could you just introduce yourself very briefly?
Yeah. So I'm Abby, and I work with the Glasgow Student Ministry. And is there anything else you'd like me to share?
That's perfect.
Where are you from, Abby?
If you can't tell, I'm from America, and I'm from Iowa.
I thought you were from London. Sorry.
You gotta get your accent sorted out.
I really do.
Yeah.
I'm so not having a good morning. Well, Abby, it's lovely to have you to join us. Thank you so much. Would you like to ask Jim anything?
Yeah. So yesterday you were sharing about the fact that heaven is a reality, of a dimension of reality that comes down. And then you were talking about how the new heavenly body is like embodied and real, and you'd experience things like hugs. And I was just wondering, I've been thinking quite a bit about heaven lately, and specifically our bodies and our soul. And I was just wondering if you could expound a little bit about our bodies in regards to heaven. Like, are we body? Are we soul and body? Is there a third answer?
Good. Thanks, Abby. Yeah. It's good to meet you. And we got some colleagues from Iowa as well, or a colleague from Iowa, at Labrie that works with us. So, that's a great question. And I think what many of us, even though we're Christians, have is this, what I talked about, this dualistic view of soul and body. And in that dualistic view, there's this kind of idea that really the real me is my soul, and the body is just like a vehicle that I sort of inhabit for this life. And you even see that actually in, say, a lot of, sort of slightly sci-fi, but it's becoming a reality. Computer scientists, they have this idea, rather than the soul, they would say, oh, the real me is my mind. You know, I could upload my mind to a computer and my body can die, but the real me will live on. That kind of idea. So that's like a dualistic, sort of scientific dualistic outlook. But actually, the biblical worldview is much more integrated, in that really the view of being human is that we're an integrated soul and body, and that neither, in a way, the soul or the body is the real me. They are both the real me. Do you see what I mean? It's neither that one is the real me and one's just this sort of shell that we inhabit, but that God created us as embodied souls, something like that, embodied souls. And I mean, it's an interesting, you can even tell this if you do a slightly bizarre thought experiment, but if you imagine somebody that you love, so it might be your partner, husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or parent or sibling or something, but if you took out their mind, say, or their soul and put it in another body, would it be them? You know, and would you really feel about them in the same way? Do you see? And I think that just shows that as human beings, we really know each other, don't we, as embodied beings. You can't really separate the two apart and say, no, that's more you, or that. Actually, it's both together in a very integrated way. And so that's the way God created us to be. And the way that we will be in the new creation is, again, we will be embodied beings, and Jesus really shows the way to that. You think when Jesus was resurrected, he wasn't just a soul, he was actually resurrected as an embodied being that the disciples could feel, they could touch, he could eat things, and he could talk to them. And when he ascended into heaven, he still remained an embodied being, because he didn't leave his sort of body behind on the mountain with the disciples, but he bodily went into the dimension of heaven, and he will return in his body, and at that time those who have trusted in him will be resurrected, bodily resurrected. So the Christian hope is actually this wonderful hope that it is, you could call it, it's not that the material world disappears in the new creation, but actually the material world, including our bodies, is fulfilled by the dimension of heaven and deepened and thickened. So that would be, I hope that's the Christian view. I suppose the only last question would, some people ask, well, what then happens, between when we die and when Jesus comes again? And, the traditional Christian view would be that part of you which in the Bible would term the soul, or would term the soul, is with Jesus in the heavenly dimension. Because if you're a Christian, then because the Holy Spirit is living within you, then there is a part of you that is already eternal. But your body is not yet a part of the new creation, so it dies here on earth. But in sense, the souls in heaven, as it were, are just waiting for that moment when Jesus comes again, when they can be reunited with their bodies. And that's the final destiny for us as human beings, is to be embodied souls again. Or, of course, there's another way you could look at it, which is a slightly more modern way. That way I've just talked about would be the traditional Christian understanding. A more modern way would be, I call it slightly the sci-fi time travel resurrection idea, but it would be something that that actually, when you die, you leave time, because time is part of the creation, the created order, and you leave created time. And but there's no, that in a sense there's a way in which then you move into eternity rather than being, in a sense, held within earthly time. So you could say that perhaps the moment that you die, in the blink of an eye, could also be the moment that Jesus comes again. Even though time goes on earth for you, because you moved into eternity, you immediately move to the moment in time where Jesus comes again. So that in a sense you're never, if you like, a sort of disembodied soul, but actually you become re-embodied at that instant in the new creation when Jesus has come again, the fulfillment of the new creation. I hope that makes sense. But if you want to, there is a chapter on it in my book. So, Abby, you can. There's a chapter on it because it is a great question. But actually, it has lots of really important repercussions. This idea of actually the God is redeeming the physical creation, because one of the things it does for us as Christians is it gives us a really good reason to care for the environment. Because actually, if this earth is part of eternity, God is redeeming it, then it's really important how we care for it and how we look after it. So, this idea that it's not a dualism, there's this integrated reality, is actually really, really important for the way that we live as Christians.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I hope that's all right, Abby. I don't know if there's anything you want to follow up with, but
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, thanks, Jim, so much for that. And thanks, Abby, for your question. It was such a good question. Yeah, thanks so much, Abby.
Cheers, Abby.
Thanks, bye. Yeah, guys, if you have a question for Jim, please let your ministry leader know. And you can be like Abby and come on live and have a chat with Jim. Right now, we're just gonna transition to Jim's talk. And so, Jim, I'm just going to pray for you quickly, and then we can get on.
Lovely. Thanks so much.
Let's pray. Yeah, Father, I just thank you for another day at summer school, Lord. I thank you that we can all be together and at home at the same time. I just thank you that, that you're sovereign over all, and that because of you, we still have access to what Jim has to say to us today, Father. So I just bless Jim with your words, Lord. And Father, I just pray that your will be done through Jim today, Father. Yeah, just pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thanks, Jim.
Okay, over to me, is it? Okay, great. Lovely to be with you again. And this morning, we're going to do some thinking together. And it might really stretch some of you. So I hope you can keep up. But I think it'll be very exciting and stimulate a lot of thoughts for you as we work through some of the ways that we get lost in smaller stories. I've been reading Martin Luther King's sermons, some of Martin Luther King's sermon in this book, A Gift of Love. And I was really struck by one of the things he says. He says, never must the church tire of reminding men and women that they have a moral responsibility to be intelligent. And then he says, the call for intelligence is a call for open-mindedness, sound judgment, and love for truth. One does not need to be a profound scholar, nor a keen academician to engage in an assiduous pursuit of truth. So that's what we're going to do today, tomorrow, especially is stretch our minds in thinking about what is true, what is real. And what we're going to think about today is the way we often get stuck in smaller stories. Yesterday, we thought about the biggest story of what God is doing. And you may remember we looked at how this story answers these 7 basic questions that we think about life. But in this session, we're going to think about what happens when we get stuck in smaller stories. And this is what really happens from the fall onwards. We saw yesterday that God invites human beings to be a part of his bigger story. He invited Adam and Eve to extend the boundaries of heaven until the whole earth became a heavenly place. But now we're going to think about what happened when Adam and Eve rejected that big story and they chose to live within a smaller story. It's the story of their own power, their own will to shape reality the way they want. Romans 1 tells us that we've exchanged the truth of God for a lie and the glory of God for idols. So what happens when we get rid of the big story? is that we get caught up in lies and idols. We exchange the truth about the transcendent creator, and we make gods for ourselves from within the creation. The things in the created order we make and give ultimate value to. Now, one of the things that I've seen over the years is that all false stories that we live in are reductionistic, and I think this is really profound about what they do. I think it's often what happens is that a smaller story, it takes a part of the truth and then it expands it into being the whole truth. So that's what's particularly difficult is it's not that everything about a smaller story is wrong, but it maybe takes just a part of the story and then expands it into the whole thing. So you could think about something like communism, for example. Marx took a part of the truth of human experience, which is about economics and class structures. But then he said that is the whole truth of reality. Or perhaps something you could think of like critical theory, if you've studied that at university. Critical theory is all about analyzing the relationships of power and the relationship of the oppressor and the oppressed. And that is definitely a part of truth, a part of reality in a fallen world. But then it sees the whole, it becomes like this lens through which you see the whole of reality. And we lose touch with other things that are in human experience, like grace, for example, or serving one another, things like that. So all these stories are reductionistic. Now, the stories may be embodied in many different things, the stories that we have today. Some of them, these smaller stories, are embodied in religions. Say something like Buddhism. In a way, Buddhism is about answering the question of how do we deal with suffering? And then it becomes, though, a total story of reality. They could be embodied in philosophies like Nietzsche's idea of the Superman or the Übermensch. So stories, these alternative stories can be embodied in philosophies. They can be embodied in political theories like I've talked about, like Karl Marx. They can be embodied in material conditions that we live in, like consumerism or media technologies. All of these embody stories. Consumerism, like, you know, you are happy by consuming things, and if you're unhappy, you can always buy something that will make you happy. Or technology, we can be in multiple places at multiple times, yeah, almost sort of omniscient through the internet and things like that. So all of these things in our lives embodies stories, false and reduced stories. But in this session, I want to focus on a story that is dominating our current age. And the reason I'm doing this is because I think you'll be able to identify parts of that story in yourselves. And at the end, the question I'm going to give you is to think about maybe how this smaller story, you may be caught up in it in various ways in your life. I think it draws together lots of things that have gone on in philosophy and in thinking and in our in social theory that have gone on over the last centuries, and they've kind of come together in a certain way. So what I'm going to do is give you some examples of it and see if you recognize these things, recognize what's going on, and can put them together. Excuse me. So the first way I started to realize about this story that was going on, this smaller story, is when I was doing a film discussion. So at L'Abri, we have people come and stay with us from all over the world, and they just come and we live together, and they have time to think through their questions and join in some of the work of cooking and things like that we need to do as part of a community together. One of the wonderful things we do every Wednesday night is we watch a film together, and then we have a discussion about it. And one of my colleagues has shown this film, The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick, which is quite a long film and an unusual film, but a very beautiful and very profound film. And the next morning I was doing breakfast. So I asked one of the students, I said, what did you think of the film? And they said this: I didn't like it. It was a bad movie. It was slow and confusing, and I was bored. And as I began to reflect on this interaction, I suddenly realized it was interesting that I had asked her, what did you think about it? But what did she tell me? She told me what she had felt about the film, that she didn't like it and that it was boring. Essentially, as I began to wonder about it more, I thought that she didn't like it because it didn't really make her feel very good, or perhaps hold her interest and make her feel entertained. But what was lacking in the way she engaged with the film is that she didn't really see it in any other way other than how she felt about it. There was nothing about how the movie was made, or the acting, or the cinematography, the design, what it was really about. Okay, so this is one of the ways that it started me kind of thinking about what's going on here. I asked her what she thought about something, but she told me what she felt. Another way that this is shown in our culture is a conversation that I had at lunchtime with a group of students. So one of the things we do at L'Abri is most lunchtimes we sit around a table and eat lunch together. And I'll just ask the people gathered, has anyone got a question they want to ask? And someone asked a question about marriage. And the question sort of went like this: if two people are in love with each other, why do they need a piece of paper to say you're married? Can't you just be in love with one another? Isn't that enough? Obviously, that's a thing that many people ask today and many people see. And I guess, you know, with the divorce rate, you say, well, what does the, you know, difference does the piece of paper mean? Isn't it being in love that is most important? Well, what struck me is how we've introduced, how we've reduced rather the institution of marriage, which involves lots of other aspects of what it means to be human, just to a feeling. So that the feeling of being in love defines marriage. Now, this picture here is of someone who is marrying themselves because they are in love with themselves. It's called sologamy, and it's a growing trend. People marry themselves and make promises to be true and to be good to themselves. A Brazilian judge recently wrote an essay called Marriage, No Rights or Duties, Only Feelings, or affectivity. I'm going to discuss that word affect, but feelings. And she argued for a new definition of marriage, which she said is egalitarian, it's flexible, and only subject to desire rather than rules. So marriage should be all about love, being in love, and there shouldn't be any rules. That was her argument. So what's going on here where we think about something like marriage just as a feeling of being in love? Here's another one to think about, all the new social movements that are going on. It's interesting to think about the idea of taking offense. It seems to me that often what it revolves around is whether you felt offended yourself by something. And often that feeling of being offended can trump all the facts or the intent or the truth or even freedom of speech. So I've been following, for example, J.K. Rowling, where she tweeted in response to a piece that discussed people who menstruate. And she tweeted this, you probably know this: people who menstruate, I'm sure they used to have a word for those people. Someone help me out. So she's been socially excluded for asking a question because it offended people. And also the way this works is through memes. You think of the power of a meme. This is a meme one of my friends sent me. So that's Greta Thunberg saying, you've stolen my dreams and my childhood. And then someone working in a little boy working in a lithium mine in Africa, child sort of slave labor, really. Getting that cobalt for your electric cars as fast as I can, Greta. So when we see a meme like that, it's really interesting that what it does is it appeals to a whole lot of feelings in us. It could be on both sides of this debate, but doesn't really have much content to it or sort of facts or any basis. And memes tend to just work this way. Here's another example. In politics, politics today is dominated by emotional slogans that really appeal to a certain mood in us, but don't really have much content. So you could think of Make America Great Again, that was Trump, or Change was Obama. Let's Take Back Control, the Brexit, or even, maybe this will be very unpopular saying this with the Scottish referendum, but you can think of the appeal to the word freedom. But what is important, isn't it, is the content of that. What are we free from? What are we free for? Etc. etc. But I'm just saying, right across the board, wherever we are, I think all the parties, all the political persuasions have this idea of appealing to something that generates a feeling and a mood, but doesn't really have necessarily a content attached to it. Here's another example from on identity, our identities. This is a growing sense today that actually my identity is internal and inside my brain or inside my feelings rather than anything external. So obviously when in the transgender movement, this is taken from a transgender website I was looking at, it said your gender is between your ears, but your sex is between your legs. So your identity is inside and internal to you and not defined by anything external. You are what you feel you are. Now, moving maybe closer to home for many of us, what about faith? I meet many Christians for whom the existence of God is based in their feelings. So they very strongly associate God with a certain set of feelings. And I've often experienced these people running into a problem or telling me about a problem, that God is there when I feel he is there, maybe at the worship service on the Sunday, or at summer camp, or at Navigator Summer School. But where is God on a rainy Monday morning in Glasgow or in Inverness? Paul Davey, who's been doing the technology, told me it's been raining the whole time, every day that I've spoken to him during this conference. So where is God when things don't go well, when we're lonely? And it makes us very vulnerable, because if God is located in our feelings alone, then when we feel low or disappointed or struggling, it's not so much that we ask, where is God in this? But we more feel he doesn't actually exist at all. So what is going on in all these instances? I could give you many, many more. I wonder if you could just think yourselves, yeah, what is happening here? There's a kind of, actually I call this a revolution, because it is, I think, a change in the way that we see reality. It's switching around something. All these examples are changes in the way we see ourselves within reality, which I've termed has been termed the affective revolution. The word affect comes from the word affection. So it's our sort of emotions, feelings, our sentiments towards something, the way that we feel about something. Now, this is a very complex slide, but don't worry about it, to the details of it. There's a Dutch Christian philosopher called Herman Dooyeweerd. His name is very difficult to spell, but he was a Christian philosopher in the 20th century, and he said that there are kind of 15 modes or aspects of human experience that we have, such as, say, the logical, the psychical, the social, the economic. You can see them there, all of these things, going from the most basic things like number at the bottom and space, up to the questions of morality and experiences of what is right and wrong, and then of faith. Now, what has happened in this affective revolution is really that what you call it is called the affective field. So that would be the field of my inner feelings, emotions, sentiments, has really come to dominate the whole of human experience and become absolutely central to everything that the way that we relate to ourselves, to other people, to the world, and to God, this inner feeling. So let me give you some examples. For example, truth or rationality becomes what I feel to be true. And maybe this is the power of things like conspiracy theories, because in conspiracy theories, you can, people, they don't listen to the facts or the evidence, but it's often what I feel to be true. Aesthetics, so say like beauty, appreciation of art, becomes about what I like or what makes me feel good, like the girl thinking about the film. She didn't like it because it didn't make her feel good, and therefore it was a bad film. Morality, right and wrong, good and evil, becomes what I feel is right, or even maybe what makes me feel good. So if something makes me feel good, it is morally good. And if something makes me feel bad, it's morally bad. So this might be where, for example, a lot of, or some psychotherapies have said we should get rid of the idea of guilt because we shouldn't be made to feel bad. Faith becomes about what makes me feel worthwhile or purposeful, or what gives me positive feelings. And identity becomes about who I feel I am. So I hope through those little examples just there, you get an idea of the way that this affective revolution is this way that we begin to see the whole of reality through our inner feelings, sentiments, and emotions, but sort of disconnected from the external reality, the world outside us, that actually what is going on within us becomes the definition of what is real and true and good, alone, disconnected from other things around us. Now, what I want to say actually is this is very important, that what I'm doing now is not a critique of emotions or being emotional, because emotions are a crucial part of being human. God is emotional. We see that in Genesis, first chapter of the Bible, Genesis 1:31, where when God sees what he's created, the Bible, maybe it was a really stiff upper lip Englishman that wrote it, but it says, translated as, when he saw what he had created, he said it was very good. But actually, I think the Hebrew is, in a sense, it was awesome. And not in the sense that, my hamburger is awesome, but in the sense of that, wow, when he saw it, it just filled him with wonder and delight and joy at what he had made. Later on in Genesis 6, we see the Lord is grieved at the evil and what people are doing to one another in the world he's created. So God is emotional. Jesus is emotional. When he hears of Lazarus's death, he weeps. So, and when he sees the widow of Nain with her son who has died, it says he was moved in his bowels. That's the literal Greek. He was gutted, would be what we would say today. He was gutted by seeing this widow in her grief. And we are emotional beings made in God's image. So this is not a critique of emotions. It's a really essential part of our humanness. But what is happening here is actually when our emotions or our affects, our affections, they become central and the mediating point of our entire view of reality. Now, in the mature person, I think inner feelings are acknowledged and named, but they're also integrated and organized with other things in life, with other values and virtues. So I have two children, and I remember when they're teenagers now, or beyond teenagers, one's at university, but I remember when they were really small, and it first dawned on me that I would be bathing, this chunk of my day, my evening, which used to be mine, was now taken up by bathing the kids, every evening. And that was going to happen every evening for quite a long time. Thankfully, I don't have to bath them now. But imagine if I said, well, I don't feel like parenting today, therefore I'm not a parent anymore. If my feelings were allowed just to to dominate. Now, of course, it's right to acknowledge those feelings. Can be frustrating being a parent, and it's demanding. But actually, you have to integrate those emotions in other things, with your duty, in one sense, also the joy of parenting, but also the recognition that it's hard work and that it takes giving to another. So yeah, I'm not making a critique of emotions at all, but what I'm saying is when emotions become central to our whole view of reality and actually disconnected from other things in reality. Now, how did we get here? I'm going to try to us to think about how did we get here, and this is where I go back to Martin Luther's thing about, you know, Christians have a kind of calling to be intelligent. Is actually, I think it's good that we think about the history of ideas, because we didn't just get here by accident. It's actually been a gradual move over hundreds of years of thinking. I'm just going to pull out a few just moments where we're going to stop and think about how we got there. And then I'm going to just think about some questions we might ask about this view of the world, and then leave you with some questions for your groups. Okay, so, oh,
A cup of tea.
My wife brought me a cup of tea. Thanks. That's lovely. Good, thanks, Maren, very much. Anyway, right. So thinking about how did we get here? Okay, so the first stop I want to think about is what I call the move to subjectivism. So that is the move to seeing ourselves as the center of reality. And this is a picture on the right-hand side there of Descartes, the famous 17th century philosopher, French philosopher. And Descartes began with doubting that anything existed. He said, we have to doubt everything. We doubt God, we doubt the Bible, we doubt everything. Apart from, all that was left was the thinking self. And you remember, if you know Descartes' philosophy, he said that famous thing, I think, therefore I am. So you could say, because there must be somebody thinking, then I must exist. And he started with himself and his thinking, and then began to work outwards the whole of reality. So this is a move towards the thinking self. Then as we go on through the 18th, 19th, 20th century, we see an increasing move to naturalism. By naturalism, I mean that there's nothing supernatural about the world. It's just all physical material and time and chance, products of time and chance. And within this world, they began to see human beings as just being biological machines. We weren't special. We weren't created in the image of God. We're just biological machines. And in the absence of God and any transcendent idea of the good or the goal of life, what good and evil began to become reinterpreted as pleasure and pain. So that because we're just biological machines, the real good, or the only good maybe that is left, is pleasure, and the only evil that there is pain. Okay, so this is another part of feeding into this idea that everything should be about pleasure and pain. And then we get a move as well towards affectivity, or towards the affective self, the feeling self. So remember, Descartes had the thinking self at the heart of reality. But these pictures on the right-hand side are the romantic poets and writers, Byron, Shelley, and Mary Shelley, Wordsworth, those kind of people. And they saw that the world of the machine was beginning to make the whole universe a sort of disenchanted world. And they said, no, but actually the way that we connect things is not through our thinking. That just leads to this dry science and disconnection with reality, but through our feelings. And our feelings are the things that tell us the truth about reality. They tell us, they're the things that connect us with God. They're the thing that connect us with nature, with who we really are. So you could say that this is a move to saying, not I think, therefore I am, but I feel, therefore I am. So this is a move towards, affectivity, the central things of feelings. Now, later, as we move into the 20th century, in the 1950s, there was a whole movement in what I call humanistic psychologies. And they took this idea of the inner life of the feelings, but combined it with the idea of the most important thing in life is the pleasure-pain axis, the pleasure-pain balance, and to teach that basically that we're saved or improved or made better through being able to express our inner feelings and feel good about ourselves. So this is where that whole phrase of feeling good about yourself arises from, that that actually what is wrong is that the external world is repressing our feelings and our emotions, and that if we can only express our feeling and emotions, if we can only feel good about ourselves, then everything will be right. Okay, so moving through, so this is the phrase, be true to yourself. That is how we are saved, and everyone will be happy if we can only let each other be true to ourselves. Moving on through the 1960s and 70s, you might have heard of postmodernity, the whole postmodern sort of philosophical movement. This was a suspicion of big stories, so it's very relevant to what we're talking about. A suspicion of big stories like communism, or even science as a big story, or religions. They said that all these big stories are merely ways of oppressing people and rationalizing power. So, for example, the church, through telling the gospel, maintains power for itself over people, or science through scientific method and saying that that is the rational truth, actually suppresses all of the rest of reality. So the postmodern philosophers said that to be free, if we want to be really free, we have to be true only to our inner thoughts and feelings, not to external ideas, but again, sort of being philosophically true to ourselves. And this is the last thing I'm putting in there, a consumer mentality. Again, as we've gone through the 70s, 80s, 90s, we see this growing consumer mentality, which encourages the search for individual happiness and well-being through consuming things. And that we can all, in a sense, be our true selves and be happy by buying things and consuming them, consumer objects. So that's a whirlwind tour of about 400 years of philosophy and social history. But from this comes what people have called the affective rights thesis, which we see again today and day. So it's actually become a right to be happy, a right to be yourself, to express yourself, to be happy. And this is the affective rights thesis, really. Everyone has the right and duty to seek their own happiness. Anything that puts limits on my self-expression is oppressive. And by exercising these rights, we can all be perfectly happy and perfectly free. Okay, so that is the affective rights thesis. So what I'm going to do now briefly is think about the way that this affective revolution answers those seven. You remember I had those 7 key questions about life, and the way it answers those 7 key questions. Do that very quickly, and then we're going to think about just some questions that maybe we can ask about this view of reality. Okay, so here we go. So what is reality? Reality is defined primarily by my feelings about what is real and true. So it's my feelings. Love is real when I feel it and not real when I don't, for example. Okay, what is my identity? My identity is defined by my inner feelings and intuitions about who I am. Okay. What is good? Good is whatever makes me feel good. And alternatively, bad is what makes me feel bad. Good is what makes me feel good. What is morally good? So this is the area of morality, is what makes me feel good. What has gone wrong with the world? What has gone wrong is systems, ideas, and people that stop me being my authentic self. So anything on the outside, whether it's parents or political systems or religious ideas, anything that constrains my freedom to be who I really am is the problem with the world. And if we just get rid of all those things and we can all just be our authentic selves, we can all affirm each other, then we will have a perfect society. How can I live authentically? I'm authentic whenever I'm true to my feelings. How can I be free? I'm free when I'm able to express myself and shape reality around me according to the way I feel. So I'm free when I'm able, to express what is within me without criticism or fear. And what is the goal of life? The goal of life is to be perfectly happy in myself or with myself, something like that. That's the goal of life. Not to have any inner discomfort or disease, but to be perfectly happy. Now, many of those things actually are good things. I think it's good to be happy. I think it's good to be able to express who we are in fashion and in the things that we produce in creativity. But these things becomes a total way of seeing the world. And what I'm going to do now in just the last part of the talk is just think about some questions that this whole way of seeing reality raises. Now, I'm going to leave you in a way at the end of this session up in the air. Okay, I'm like a little bit just with the questions. And tomorrow, the session's called Deeper into Reality. And I'm going to think actually of a better way of how our inner world relates to the world outside us in a biblical way, in a way that we can really move deeper into reality. So you're going to have to kind of bear some discomfort maybe over the next little while. And I hope, though, it'll give you a lot to think about and talk about in your groups when you meet in the small groups. But here are some questions I want us just to think about in this view of reality. So can feelings really define reality? For example, are you a kind person just because you feel that you're a kind person? If you never do any acts of kindness towards anybody, then are you truly kind? Is feeling something right the same as it being right? For example, I know many people that are chronic helper sort of personalities, where they can never say no to anybody. And they want to say no, but they always somehow end up saying yes. So I guess a lot of us are like that. But it feels right to always say yes. But actually, it's very damaging to you because you end up overloaded, overworked, and then in a breakdown. So sometimes what feels wrong or difficult or uneasy or uncomfortable can be right. We're used to being in a world where, for example, our feelings can define our gender. But can our feelings define our age? What happens if I said, well, I feel like I'm a 5-year-old and I want to go back to primary school? Does that mean then that I can go back to primary school? Or what about some instances of actually where inner and outer reality doesn't match? Over the years, I've tutored many people at L'Abri, and my wife's a clinical psychologist, and she worked with many people with eating disorders. And in an eating disorder, you have this disjunction between inner feelings and outer reality. So someone who's anorexic often feels that they're overweight, when actually in reality they're severely underweight. And we don't then say, well, just go with your feelings. We actually try to want to make feelings and reality come together. Or aesthetics, is Tree of Life a bad film because I found it boring? Does my feelings define the reality of the film? Or maybe is there a problem in me that somehow I can't engage with this work of art in a deeper way? Okay, so that's one key question. Can feelings define reality? Secondly, how do we prioritize different feelings one over another if everything is just about my own feelings and feeling good or expressing my feelings. And there was a case in the paper about a woman who'd suffered domestic abuse in a gynecological clinic, and she asked very clearly that she would have a female nurse doing the internal examination that she needed. But the nurse that came in was a transgender woman, but who still had many male characteristics, sort of observably, I mean, externally, physically. And there was, you know, whose feelings come above the other? Does the woman's feelings, who's being examined and what she wants, or the transgender person and what they need? If the whole world is made up of feelings, and just our feelings define reality, then how do we make decisions like this? Okay, how stable is an identity built on personal feelings alone? For example, many of you might be aware that there's a large number of people, for example, who've transitioned gender, they've transitioned their sex, they've had sex reassignment surgery, but then decide, you know, they want to go back to their original sex or their birth sex. Our feelings can be very fluid and affected by a whole manner of things. So if we let them define our identity, I sometimes wonder whether, as a generation, particularly your generation in 20s, 30s, suffer a lot of anxiety because we're having to always sort of create ourselves from within ourselves, but without any fixed points or fixed reference points for our identity or who we are. So we're always having to curate or reinvent ourselves. And obviously a lot of social media plays into that. But we actually feel this deep anxiety within, you know, who are we really? And is that stable, and where does that come from? Okay, I'm bombarding you with questions. I'm sorry about those. If you write down some of them, because I think that these will be the things that could be really interesting to talk about in the time. So how stable are relationships? Relationships when they're built on feelings alone. For example, what if a parent said, I don't feel like parenting today? I think actually a lot of parents do that today. They say, I don't feel like parenting. I'm going to be the child today. Or a partner says, I don't feel in love. Our marriage is over. How narcissistic do relationships become when they become all about the way that I feel? Does that distort the relationship in the sense that actually what it means when we love someone is we love the way they make us feel? I recently reviewed, I write a culture section in Evangelicals Now for the last few months. So I reviewed an Amazon TV series called Soulmates. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but it's about this, because slightly in the future, there's this scientific test that you can take where it identifies your soul particle and then matches you with the perfect soul, your soulmate. And it says the person who will make me feel the best in all the world. And there's 6 like standalone episodes that sort of explore what happens. You know, there's a couple that are in actually what seems like a very happy marriage, but the mere existence of this test, that I could be happier with somebody else, you know, that actually, yeah, I am happy, but I could be happier if I took the soulmates test. And in the end, both the man and the woman in this couple take the soulmates test and end up in other relationships, and they have children. They had children from their marriage before, and when they're the little film ends with one of them coming to pick up the children from the other one because they're taking them for the weekend, and they suddenly say, one of them says to each other, you know, I miss things how they used to be. And then they talk about an experience they had. And you suddenly see that their marriage was more than just feelings. It had a whole lot of history and experiences that they'd shared together. So anyway, okay, yeah. How stable are relationships just built on feelings alone? I'm not saying again that feelings aren't a part of a relationship. How do feelings help us engage with the fullness of reality? This is a painting of Millet. It's called Millet's Gleaners. He's a 19th century French artist. And in one of the Labries, this painting hung on the wall of the Labrie in Switzerland, I think this was. The students at one lunch table asked the people in Labrie to take it down because they said it was offensive, because it showed black people working in menial work in a field. It's slightly, sorry, the way it's cut, it's slightly out of shot, while the field owner, who's a white man on a horse, stands looking on. And I've read on a website, it talked about how this painting portrayed slavery. It so happened that I got to see the real Millet painting in an exhibition when I got stuck on the Eurostar in Amsterdam, and at the Rijksmuseum saw the real painting. And it was fascinating just to read about the description of the painting, that actually he painted this painting to be socially subversive, to show the dignity of manual labor, and also to contrast the hard work and the sweat of the people against, in a sense, the nonchalance of the owner of this farm sitting on his horse. And that it was so sort of socially revolutionary at the time that actually people tried to stop it being exhibited in the Salon in Paris. So it's interesting that the students reacted it to a certain way. It's offensive, but actually the reality of the painting is something different, according to at least the artist and his intentions. So yeah, do feelings help us engage with the fullness of reality, or can they actually become ways that we just stop engaging with things because we don't like them, or we feel something about them, but we don't actually engage with them? Okay, here is another one. How do we stop ourselves becoming irrational if truth is derived from feelings alone? If there's no connection between between truth and what actually is there, if it just becomes about feelings, then could pigs fly because they feel like flying? Maybe not. How does this change our view of faith if we only accept, for example, doctrines as being true because we like them, or they make us feel good? How does that affect our engagement with truth? What becomes a personal responsibility if our feelings are always right? Might our feelings sometimes be wrong? Might there sometimes be a problem with us, not just the world out there? For example, if I find the film Tree of Life boring, maybe it's not the film, maybe it's more me, that I don't quite know how to really engage with a film that isn't non-stop fighting and battles or sex scenes or whatever. I'm so used to Game of Thrones that actually watching something that is meaningful and slower and profound and beautiful, I can't connect with it anymore. But if I say, well, it's just my feelings, then actually the responsibility is always on someone else, not on me. Two more questions and then I'm going to finish. Are we breeding a culture of narcissism? If everything becomes just about my feeling good, me being able to express myself, me being validated by others, then maybe everything begins to become narcissistic. Even God becomes about me and is there to make me feel good. I think this is what a paper I read is called therapeutic deism. We sort of believe in God, but he's really there just as a therapy for me. And lastly, how susceptible, and this is a serious one, might we be to manipulation when feeling good is at the core of reality? How susceptible will we be to thinking that something is true or is good just because it makes us feel better? I think this is why you could characterize our age perhaps as the entertainment age. We love to be entertained, rather like the circuses in Rome. It makes me think of Brave New World. I don't know if you've ever read that novel, but you should really read it again if you haven't or haven't read it for a while. Aldous Huxley, written in the 1930s, where they construct the whole world around feeling good. And the control of that world says there must be no gap between anyone having a felt need and that need being satisfied. Because in that gap, people start to think. They start to become sort of individuals who think and question things. And if we stop that gap, then we can control people, absolutely. How might this affect our faith? Could we be just open to things that make us feel good, or to leaders that make us feel good, rather than to truth and reality? So those are the questions. And that's where I'll leave it with a question for you. Thinking about this affective revolution as like a pair of sunglasses that we put on. You see in this picture, it makes everything look happy and bubbly and balloons everywhere. And as we might call them, a rose-tinted pair of spectacles. So the question is, how do you think the affective revolution is affecting your faith and the way you see the world, or affecting you in different ways? Yeah, it might be the way you relate to art, or the way you relate to friendship, the concept of friendship, to biblical truth, to the natural world, whatever it is. So how do you think the affective revolution is affecting your faith and the way you see the world? Good. Back over to Alex and Becca.
Thanks so much, Jim, for opening that up for us. I mean, it's such a pervasive, smaller story that I think we're all caught in the midst of, for sure. I particularly resonated with what you were saying about the pressure that we all face in this affective revolution, and the anxiety that we face to create our own identity and our own reality. I think that's such a scary thing, that and a pressure I know I relate to.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you were saying, Jim, like we each of us can identify or relate to something what you've said today, and especially with the questions. I think it's terrifying, really. If you think
it's a bit scary. It's a bit scary, but it's good to also, I guess, remember what you were talking about yesterday in terms of how does this fit into the bigger story and where we're at within that. It's
kind of like I think often you have to do deconstruction before reconstruction. So this is the deconstruction one. So it feels very uncomfortable when you begin to think about these things. I know, it affects me in so many different ways. So it is, it is uncomfortable to be deconstructed and sit with that. But the next two sessions are going to be kind of reconstructing a better worldview and then fitting that in with the big picture. So
what you're saying is like bear the pain now, go into it a little bit deeper, but then in the coming few days we're gonna start to lift our eyes again.
And maybe just begin now. Wrestle with the questions. Hopefully that'll help people do that.
I wanted to show you, Jim, before we go, that I put this on today for you. It's my
good.
Go Gooners.
That's definitely made me feel effectively much better.
I don't want to feed that. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe it's making me feel worse because we've had our worst season in 26 years or something.
I know. We better cut away now. Let's not go into that. Cheers so much, Jim. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Good. Okay. God bless, and see you tomorrow.
That's perfect. Guys, we're just going to move on to our local discussion groups now. So after this, don't go just yet, we'll have a few announcements, but just after we're finished here, please go straight onto your Zoom links. That's it.
Or if you're not part of a Scottish student ministry, then find the people that are around you to discuss this further throughout the rest of the day before tomorrow. Also, just wanted to say another reminder that if you have reflections that you've had so far, please make a wee video clip and send it to comms@navigators.co.uk. It's scrolling at the bottom of the screen. We want to put these videos into a compilation for the end of the week so we can see what God's been teaching us throughout the week. Also, forgot to mention, if you've been enjoying any new freedoms and you want us to be able to put them up here, send those into that email address as well, and we'll try to we'll fit you in later in the week.
And also, guys, the quiz is tonight.
The quiz is tonight.
Woo! Yes! I love a quiz.
What time is that again, Becca?
It's at 7:30, I believe.
7:30. So 7:30. And just to say, if you've signed up, you should receive an email from Katrina with the Zoom link in it this afternoon. If you've not signed up and you're on the stream, please sign up on the website, on the Navigator's website, the summer school page, and then you should receive that email later on. But we'll send you all to your discussion groups. And for those of you who go to the quiz, go enjoy the quiz with Grace.
Yeah. Okay, thanks,
all right,
guys.
cheers, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
God, my God, how I long to rest in you. All within me, soul and body yearns for you. Where my spirit wanders in a land where there's no water, I'm thirsty till I take a drink from you. For I've seen your sanctuary, the beauty of the holy, and I knew that nothing else would do. Because your love is better than life, better than life. Because your love is better than life, better than life. I'll praise with my heart, praise with my hands lifted high. With all that you provide, in the fullness of your presence, I will be satisfied. I've called to mind your goodness in the watches of the night. You have always been my helper, you will be my present light. In the shadow of your wings, every moment of my life, holding on to love, clinging on so tight. Because you're